These guys are ridiculous. These guys are ridiculous.
Now, how about them damn Celtics?
This is going to sound really ageist, but I'm going to try it on for size anyways. Last year, I spent a lot of the season saying it's unlikely that a 24 and 25-year-old can get it done. And now we have Jaylen's 26 and Jayson will turn 25, I think, in March. From a NBA history perspective and from a psychology perspective, it's just unlikely that they are growing or they're done growing, that they see the game as well as they're ever going to see it. So to your point, even though Blake's knees might not be able to take him where he wants to go, his brain is ready. And I think the Jays are still young. And interestingly, I was ready to kind of retire that take this year. I figured, you know what, they are that much older. They did just go to the finals. There's just like so much more wind in their sails. But Jack, maybe you've observed this too, or Sam, you as well. Like they've brought up their own ages several times in post-game press conferences, so it's something they're thinking about. They've like a few games ago, Smart was talking about Jaylen's growth, and Jaylen said, "Well, I used to be 19, now I'm 26." It's like, yeah, but the brain's still developing until it's 27 or 28, and 26 isn't that old in the NBA. So I do think there's an element where because they've been into the postseason so deep so many times, we kind of just assume they're just as polished and professional as Curry and Clay or LeBron and Davis, but they're still quite young. If Tatum pulls it out as a 25-year-old MVP, that's not unprecedented, but it's a younger MVP season. So I do think not like they're immature, like they're punks or anything like that, like it's pejorative and paternal for me to even suggest. But I do think that there is an element that like they're still young stars figuring it out, even though they've been anointed as kings of the NBA.
I think that's a good point. And you see it throughout the team. It's really great that they have such a mix of older players to go along with them. Like even Marcus Smart is getting up there now to where he's fully developed mentally, right? That could be something you correlate with how he's matured as a player, taking care of the ball, taking better shots over the last couple seasons since he got the starting role. Of course, Blake Griffin, you can mention him in there. And he's been really impressive with his hustle this whole season. Every chance he's got, he's really busted his ass out there. And of course, Al Horford, when he came back, was such a big piece to get. And I was excited from the jump. Not everybody was. I was calling for it beforehand. Me and Bobby Manning were when we would have him on the shows, and we had him on as soon as the trade happened. Funny enough.
Yeah.
But you got Brogdon, who's like 30 now. There is a healthy mix of older players to kind of hold their hand if they truly have to. Hopefully they don't.
Right.
Because they should be mature in the sense of how many times they've been there. They are not the average 25 and 26-year-olds in the league. No. A lot of these guys don't get drafted into success, and they have to go through years and years of the lottery. Just look at somebody like Brandon Ingram, who was with the Lakers for so long, and finally the Pelicans are starting to put something together.
Right.
So he has like no experience, and he was drafted one pick before Brown.
Absolutely. And to your point, Cam, it got me thinking, not that the Celtics can't win the championship this year. They're clearly talented enough to do so. But when is the last time a team has won the championship where the primary star was, however old, and the next star like 26 and under?
Last year, the aforementioned Tim Bontemps, who we were talking about before we recorded, he had a stat that I think it was a team hasn't been to the finals with this young of a scoring duo. Like it's only happened like 3 times since the 70s or something like that. So even a year later, looking at the 2023 NBA finals, it would be a very young core. I mean, if you look at Shaq and Kobe, Shaq had been in the league for 10 years.
Yeah.
So Kobe was young, but Shaq was older, and there are a bunch of older veterans around. And on and on and on. Actually, this is something I've been thinking about is I think the average age of an MVP is maybe 26 or 27, but what's the average age of a finals MVP? Because I would hazard that's much older, that it's 30-year-olds plus, because there is, and again, I don't mean to be ageist. I'm not saying 25-year-olds and 24-year-olds are morons, but there is an element of mental maturity. And again, they're not immature. There's just a polishing of how you see the world. I think anyone listening who's, closer to 30 or beyond has experienced that in your 20s. You grow up a lot more than maybe you expect. So I don't mean to belittle the Jays. I don't think that they're being immature. But when you talk about Blake just seeing what needs to be done and his teammates not necessarily rising to that moment, I do think there's an element about, being maybe spooked by the stage, the ghosts of finals past, and kind of having your feet stuck in the mud that I think slightly older players might be able to get around.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at last year, the Warriors obviously were in their 30s. It's Curry, Clay, Green. Also apologize for dog barking in the background. The Bucks a year ago, I mean, Giannis was 26, but around them you had 30-year-olds, Chris Middleton, or who maybe was like 29, but Drew Holiday, who was probably 29, 30. Lakers, older. Raptors, older. Warriors, twice. Cavs. The Warriors in 2015 are the first one you can look at. Curry was 26. Draymond and Clay were 24 and 24. So that makes sense. But like down the line, Spurs, Tim Duncan was older. Miami Heat twice. They were older in their prime. Dirk was in his prime. Kobe and Pau Gasol were in their prime. So it's like, it's not easy to win a championship at 26 or under. And you can have a leader there, right? Like Steph Curry and, Clay and Draymond. That's the best example of just a young core winning it. But even look at the Thunder, like not to compare the Celtics to the Thunder, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people did that last year, but like KD, Russell Westbrook, James Harden were all super young when they went to the finals, and they couldn't get it done because they were just too young and inexperienced. And you kind of look at that against the Warriors last year. Also interesting, I'm on Basketball Reference to look at this. The total win shares for playoff top performers. I looked down the list, right? Last year or 2 years ago, it was Giannis, AD, Kawhi. It's always on the team that either wins the championship or came in second. Last year, it was Jimmy Butler, not like someone who didn't even make the finals.
He was the only one on that team.
I've got my big face coffee mug right here.
That is a very cool mug.
We love Jimmy Butler.
I love that. I love
Jimmy Butler as a dog. That's great. I hope Jimmy Butler hears this.
The rest of them are rats, but he's fine.
Rats. No, that's crazy to me though. Someone who didn't even make, like, that just shows you how much he carried them in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're bad. Like, that's not that good of a team. They had no business going to 7 games with that Celtics team last year. I've only been crying about it for months. I couldn't believe it when it was happening. I was like, I couldn't believe they lost game 6, which was a Butler performance, to the point of this whole conversation. Then they almost lost game 7. Like, what's going on? Why is it getting that close?
Because the Celtics were a little young. They had the yips. Jimmy Butler's a dog, and Bam Adebayo is maybe the strongest man in the NBA. Strongest man in the Eastern Conference.
Screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Jimmy is ridiculous. Like, the fact that he led win shares in 3 rounds.
And in the bubble. Even go back to the bubble. Yeah. It's the same story.
He went crazy in the bubble. Jimmy Butler's fun. He's one of those guys in the NBA that you can't really hate. Let me rephrase.
I'm the hater, and I agree.
It's very easy to hate him from a fan's perspective. Like, if he's playing your team, you don't like him. But it's just like, as a player, like, you got to respect what he does.
He's like, do you guys watch Game of Thrones? He reminds me of Joffrey. Because I thought Joffrey was such a good character because he elicited so much emotion. And most people hated Joffrey. I don't think anyone was rooting for Joffrey. But Jimmy Butler's the same way. Like, no one is neutral on Jimmy Butler. Like, everyone has strong takes on that guy. That's what makes the NBA so great. Like, I think if Jimmy Butler was in the NFL, he'd be like out of the league because he'd be like such a pariah. But in the NBA, even in the Heat, like the weigh yourself, cut your hair, Miami Heat, you could just be like a little bit of a loose cannon and it still works. It's great.
Now, Jack, I can see by your face there you have also not watched Game of Thrones.
I haven't seen Game of Thrones. No, I was going along. I wanted to let you finish the thought because I knew it was a good thought. I'm just a terrible TV watcher, so I'm awful at context when it comes to comparisons usually. But no, yeah, Jimmy Butler is amazing. I love the big face mug too. That's awesome.
Taco, come on, Taco.